So, Doug, I asked this a lot of people. If you could sum your wrestling career up in one word, how would you describe it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Comprehensive. I think that's a good word that describes it. I've been to a lot of places and done a lot of different things and experienced a lot of cultures, a lot of different people, personalities. So, yeah, I think comprehensive is quite a good word.
I think that's a good word. Jim, would you agree?
Definitely, mate. I mean, do you want to tell Doug what we were doing about half an hour before we came on stream?
Yeah, we've been spending a lot of time looking into your career, and we're like, we can't find a place where you've not been in the UK.
Yeah, that'll be about right. Although I'm actually surprised myself because my partner lives in Manchester, so when I go and see her quite often, we'll take little away breaks, and I'll be like, oh, I didn't wrestle. I've never wrestled in this town, and then I'll get back and I'll look up and go, oh, actually, I did. I've forgotten.
I mean, it's 30 years, man. Do you know what I mean? You can't remember everything, right?
No, you can't. No. Obviously, I remember the memorable ones, but there's obviously thousands and thousands of tiny shows that I've done, day in, day out, start of my career, middle of my career, that just people say, do you remember this match or that match to me occasionally? And I say, I don't know, can't remember that at all. Or it'll pop up on YouTube. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't remember this one. So I watch it again and I'm thoroughly entertained most of the time.
Absolutely, mate. So let's obviously start at the beginning, mate. How did it all begin for you? What made you obviously want to get into wrestling?
So I used to go to the British wrestling with my dad when I was very young, sort of like 10 or 11 years old. And I enjoyed that, as you would as a child. But then my family moved to Germany and we got the very first Sky satellite TV dishes. And I ended up watching, I think WrestleMania 3 was the very first thing I ever saw of American wrestling anyway. And that's what kind of drew me in as a fan, really, just the showmanship, the pomp and pageantry of it all, and the athleticism as well. I was quite heavily into judo, and I kind of appreciated what these guys did and what they put their bodies through. But I also understood and was very entertained by the characters. So that was around 1980, 87, 88, I'd say. And then I just turned into a massive fan. I came back to England in 1989, 1990, I think, and just started digesting every piece of wrestling I could possibly find, videotape trading, magazines, watched the limited amount of wrestling that was still on TV in this country, and just obviously went to live shows as well. The UK live shows, as they were at that time. And I kind of thought I'd be able to do it, like I was interested. And I never for once thought that I'd be a huge star or even wrestle in America. I was very much keyed into the British wrestlers and identifying much more with them, because I'm on 5'10" and I weighed back then, I probably weighed 12 and a half stone. So I always identified more with the British wrestlers that I saw at the time, because I was like, well, I could probably do that quite well. And I was still doing judo at the time. I was British judo champion in 1991 at my weight class, which was under 72 kilos, my weight class at the time. And from there, I saw a advert for Hamlock Wrestling School in the magazine was called Superstars of Wrestling, but it was a precursor to Power Slam or Wrestling Superstars. Can't remember. Either way around, Superstars of Wrestling. And an article by Finn Martin about Hamlocks. So I called up Andre Baker, who ran Hamlock, and went down there and started training, and that was in 1993.
Wow. Jim, you're over to you, pal, for the question.
Yeah, so obviously, as you mentioned, Doug, you trained with Andre Gray. What was it like training with Andre, and how did that sort of training impact your career?
So, I mean, ultimately, it was allowed me to learn the very basics of professional wrestling. I already knew how to fall because I'd done judo for so long. So break falls, taking a flat back bump, side bump and front bump, I knew. But training at Hammerlock enabled me to learn how to, wrestle in the limited space of the ring, allow me to learn how to run the ropes, take a turnbuckle, all the tropes of professional wrestling that you would see. And like Andre kind of instilled a mentality of you have to be able to do it for real before you do it professionally. So he had us all doing kind of amateur and shoot wrestling training as well. And I think that kind of stood me in good stead for applying that to psychology of putting wrestling matches together and how they worked and the mechanics of wrestling, alongside what I already knew from judo anyway, which gave me the timing to a large degree. And I think, really, with Hammerlock, the main thing about it, he was the only school outside of the British promoters that let anybody in. So it was just somewhere you could go and train, without fear of being, for want of a better phrase, beaten up or laid into or intimidated, out of the business. And kind of, a community of guys that wanted to get into business that were very young, that didn't necessarily know how to, all came together and we all learned together in that environment. And it wasn't the greatest of facilities. Our ring was terrible. It was basically a big garage on the side of a cliff in Folkestone. So you learn to work around those, limitations that you had at the time. So it was a good experience for the time I was there. Invaluable, really, in getting me started, I think.
Absolutely. And following on from what Jim said there, is what was the wrestling scene like around that time you were training? It was pretty dire, probably, I'd say. Problem is, it come off ITV in 1989, and this was 93. So a lot of the promoters had packed up. There was probably 3-4 touring promoters still running, and their schedules were not huge. But it was the camps that still kept people going. So over the summer holidays, you'd still be able to work the holiday camp. If you know anything about the holiday camp circuit in England, in the United Kingdom, sorry, they still kept going through the summer months. So I'd say there was, even in my first year, I did 70, maybe 80 shows, which is a lot for a rookie. Pretty mainly, a few shows that Hammerlock ran, town shows, hall shows, but the rest are all holiday camps, and that's where you really learn the art of the wrestling, skill of wrestling, because you're working in front of an audience that aren't wrestling fans, and you have to elicit a reaction out of them. So that was kind of invaluable. But in terms of the town shows, there wasn't a great deal around. Wrestling was very much on the downward slope at that point in time. Jim, over to you, pal.
Yeah, mate. So, what would you say? Was there any challenges that you faced? Obviously, being a British wrestler, competing internationally in promotions such as TNA and Ring of Honor.
Challenges were the main challenge was getting out of this country and getting exposure such that international promoters would want to book you. I think that's the biggest challenge back when I was young. It's a totally different world now. There was no YouTube. Email was in its infancy. I effectively manufactured probably 150 promotional video tapes of myself and sent them out to promoters in the United States. And I got a couple of pickups, and I was able to transition that into traveling over there and working. Alongside that, I was lucky that some of the promoters in this country, in the United Kingdom, were starting to bring over some international talent again. Not just like XWE guys or famous guys, but like guys that are on the up. And I would, network with them. I'd work with those guys, and they'd go back and give me a good word to the promoters in America. So very, very much different to how it is nowadays. It's all very word of mouth. You had to, actually put yourself out there, and really, if you did nothing at all, you'd never get seen, and you'd just be stuck where you are. you know, there's luck to it as well. But I think as well, I said, you know, at the start about how I didn't, you know, I thought, okay, I could probably do this and be a wrestler. But as I progressed, I thought, well, I'm quite good. I could probably make something of this. So then you start having ambition, and then that motivates you to try and get somewhere. And a lot of guys, you know, a lot of the guys on the UK scene back then didn't really have the ambition. They were probably doing 20, 30 shows a month, you know, in this country, but they weren't earning a fortune out of it, and they weren't necessarily having full-time careers, but it was enough to satiate their appetite. But not for me. I was more ambitious than that. And maybe that's a little bit extra that I had that enabled me to move beyond just working in this country all the time.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about obviously Ring of Honor and stuff like that. How did that obviously all begin for you, Doug?
So I was invited out to a tournament in California called King of Indies in 2001, which was a 8-man elimination tournament, and it featured all the young up and coming international stars not really stars at that time, but international talent. And I'd been recommended by Chris Daniels and Mike Modest, who both worked for this promoter in California, to be part of this tournament. So the guy brought me in, and I wrestled in that tournament. I wrestled Adam Pearce in the first round, and I wrestled Brian Danielson in the second round, lost to him. But what happened is the guy, a couple of guys that started Ring of Honor, their whole impetus for starting Ring of Honor was they saw this tournament, saw the style of wrestling that everybody did, and how the reaction to it on, you know, by the people there and online, you know, as it was at the time. And they decided they wanted to build a promotion around that style of wrestling, which was more of a, you know, technical, hard hitting in the ring style, kind of the antithesis to ECW, really. And yes, obviously I was one of those people in the tournament. They wanted me on board from the start. So that's how I was brought in. I wasn't on the first ever Ring of Honor show. I think I was on the second or third. Can't quite remember exactly, but there was a scheduling clash for the first one. But yeah, our Ring of Honor was formed because of this tournament in California, and because I was part of that tournament, I was lucky enough to be invited to be a member of the roster for Ring of Honor.
Wow, crazy. Jim, over to you, pal.
So I have to mention that you've gone from obviously the UK over to America and other places. How did you adapt your wrestling style to when you were competing in these different international promotions compared to over here in the UK?
It's interesting you say that, really. What I would do is, bringing it back a little bit, most of the stuff in this country was very, very much Americanized by that point. Very, very few shows here were very pure English style that you see on World of Sport, although I was trained in that primarily. So we were already having, you know, there was already American flavour to what the style of wrestling we did in this country. And I said, I worked guys from abroad and they'd come here. And it's easier for me to work their style than it was for them to try and do the British style, you know. But what I would do when I'd go abroad is I would think about, I'd pick individual spots and routines that I thought would fit within the style of the guy I was wrestling and try and work them into the match. So it would be a mesh of their match and my match, but simple stuff that we could both do without it being too complicated. And ultimately, that's what I did. And even when I went to Japan, the point of them booking me in Japan is they wanted a guy that did British style. So I would integrate British routines and British spots into the wrestling matches in Japan, you know, work with the guys to make sure it was seamless. Even though ultimately the match was a Japanese style match, you still had a sprinkling of British style in there. So yeah, it's just kind of knowing that that's what they wanted to see and giving it to them. And luckily, you know, back in the early 2000s, that British wrestling style wasn't really seen that much. So it always seemed to be quite unique in that I brought elements of it to the table. That's where the luck came in, but also timing. Yeah.
Brilliant. So I want to stick obviously with the UK and scene and stuff like that. Obviously, you've been through the UK scene from the good times, the bad times, and stuff like that. What's that like for you? Obviously, being part of that journey.
Well, it's interesting because for me, I started and it was really bad. You know, there was a lot of shows, but they didn't draw well. So more often than not, you were wrestling in front of 150
people if you're lucky, but I saw it grow slowly through the advent of FWA, then 1PW, those sort of style of shows. And it kind of followed the line of WWE. If WWE was getting more popular, British wrestling as a whole would kind of pick up a little bit. And then I would kind of go away on tour to Japan or something. I'd come back and the business would be up, and I'd see all these new young guys coming through and houses would be up. And then I'd go away again and come back and it'd be down again. I'd be like, but this is one exception is I went to America. So I went to TNA and I left England in 2009. And I came back to England 4 years later and the scene was exploding. I'd never seen the amount of talent that was on the scene then in 2013, the new promotions that were coming up. And it was just like a real resurgence that I'd not seen the likes of before. I'd seen ups and downs, but at that point, it had really taken off in this country. And a lot of that, I think, is promoters were using different techniques and different ways to promote. But really, the talent, there was a lot of talent coming through at that time. So the shows on the whole were really, really good, and the majority.
Absolutely, Jim. Over to you, pal.
Yes, yeah, obviously, as we know, you've had 3 decades of a career. What are some of the physical tolls that has taken upon you, and how did you manage the injuries and recovery?
So I was relatively lucky over the course of my career in that I didn't have anything too serious. I never had anything that took me out for prolonged periods of time. I'd have sprained ankles or a slight tear and partial tear in my rotator cuff and things like that would take me out for short periods. But I never had anything too serious. But what I've had over the long term is wear and tear, such that now I have a lot of things catching up with me. I've already had one knee replacement. I need the other one doing. I need one of my ankles needs to be replaced as well. I need neck surgery, and I've got issues with my shoulders. So, it's not unexpected, and I feel quite lucky that I never really got anything too serious during the course of my career. There's nothing I can't live with now, to be honest with you, thankfully. There's nothing that threatens my life imminently, put it that way. I can't step back in the ring and get slammed and suplexed out, but I'm relatively okay otherwise, relatively fit and healthy.
Awesome. So I want to talk about the British invasion. How did this all come about? Because this is one thing I love at TNA.
Oh, do you? Okay. So it was a Russo idea. He came up with the British invasion. I'm guessing based on the name of the 1960s pop music that swept America. That was called the British invasion. But yeah, he just came up with it. I think Nick had been hired. And he was very green, and so they thought that if they put him in a tag team and myself, that would enable him to learn, and we'd be able to do something with it, successful with it. And thus, that's where it came from. From our point of view, we were given the name, and we just decided to go kind of over the top with it, really, just like full on Union Jack gear and just really, really be as obnoxious as possible. That was all us. We just thought we're going to, if I'm honest with you, we didn't really think much of it, the name. We're like, but we just decided to go all in with it, and then we learned to, we learned to love the name. We actually thought the name was pretty good at the end. So it was a combination of both Russo and then, myself and Nick and then Rob Terry as well. He's in the mix too. Just deciding to, give it our all.
Jim, over to you, pal.
So, what would you say are you most proud of from your time as a member of the British invasion, then, Doug?
Oh, well, obviously bringing Nick and Rob up to a certain level, Nick especially, enabling him to grow and develop and become a proper, real pro, a really good pro. I think our title reign and our matches with Beer Money was probably the things we're most proud of, for sure.
when you have, it was nice being told that when it's ourselves and beer money on the card, then they can be certain of a good match. So they put it on every house show because then you're guaranteed, one good match, which is a nice thing to hear. So we were always the go-to when they had nothing else that they could think of. So yeah, I think that's our legacy. People remember us as a staple part of TNA, probably during its most successful period.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, mate, you've had 30 years obviously in wrestling and stuff like that. What's your top 3 matches outside of the TNA and ROH and stuff? Yeah.
Outside of that, oh my goodness. So 2 of them are going to be in Japan. Oh no, they're not. Actually, it's not in Japan. So one is against Yoshinari Ogawa in Japan, which was at Nippon Budokan in front of 18,000 people, singles match. Here in this country, I wrestled Marufuji to a time limit draw. It was on a late FWA show. Late as in towards the end of the FWA. And obviously International Impact. I don't know if you've seen the 6-man tag.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, Scorpio, and James Ty against Misawa Ogawa and Tiger Emperor. I think that's one of the most memorable matches. And I can't forget Eddie Guerrero as well from 2002. Probably one of the most influential matches on me that I've ever had, because wrestling him, I understood what it took to be a world-class professional wrestler. Before that, you have a kind of idea, but you don't really know. But once you wrestle someone who is legitimately world-class, has been there and done that, then you understand what it takes. And that's kind of the impression that match left on me.
Okay.
A lot of other people.
Yeah, so obviously you mentioned Eddie Guerrero. You've also been in the ring with AJ Styles, Drew Galloway, Samoa Joe, just to name a few.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you've sort of learned from every opponent that you've been in, especially these guys that have then gone on to obviously be in the big time of WWE and like AEW?
What have I learned working those guys? Probably that talent does rise to the top. These guys, all those guys you mentioned, all exceptional, fantastic pros. And when you're in the ring with guys like that, the work is easy, the job is easy. You don't have to worry about where they are. You don't have to worry about them not selling. You don't have to worry about being stiffed, except for Joe. Sorry, Joe. No, I'm joking. You don't have to worry about being hurt. You know they're going to make you look great. And it's a common thread that runs through all the guys that have risen and become huge stars. Is that's the constant. They're all great at what they do. They're all really, really good professional wrestlers. And I've been it's been great to be in the ring with every single one of them. And it's even good. It's good that I've wrestled them at various times in their careers as well, when they're first starting out. Or in the case of Drew, I wrestled him when he was a rookie, but then when he had that break from WWE, he got released from WWF and he went back on the indie circuit to rebuild his name. I wrestled him then, and it's nice to see their development over time as well. You can see that they've really learned and they've matured and become much, much better at what they do. It's just listing names that I've been in with that applies to, but it's an honour from my point of view, anyway.
Absolutely. How would you consider like the Mount Rushmore British wrestling? The
top 4 British wrestling. Ooh,
yep,
that's a good one, isn't it? Dynamite Kid for start, and Davey Boy. And then probably, the next 2, that's difficult, isn't it? Mark Rocco and Regal, I would say. And I don't include anyone that's currently working, because there's guys I think are fantastic now. Will Ospreay is the best wrestler on the planet, but he's not legend status yet, so we can't. Yeah.
The reason I was bringing that up in particular is when we spoke to Johnny Storm, we said that we asked him the same question. He said we can't have a debate about that.
Okay.
Bringing your name
that's
up.
Nice of him to say. Yeah. I mean, I judge it on people that have kind of paved the way internationally and actual global stars, and it's because of that period for us where household names existed and people went on to work, major leagues in America. It's very hard to pull anyone from our generation into the Mount Rushmore, I would argue. Others might say differently, like Johnny might.
Absolutely. Jim, over to you, bro.
Yeah, so my podcast, Doug, we talk a lot about mental health within wrestling.
Okay.
So if this is quite a deep question for you, I'd rather not answer. I do understand. But what are some of the mental and emotional challenges of a long and demanding career, obviously in a physically intense field that you face?
Interesting question. A lot of the mental health challenges in wrestling doesn't come from the physical side of it. It comes from dealing with the internal pressures of always trying to stay relevant, always trying to stay in the spotlight, keeping your name out there so that you can continue to earn money, and be employed. And I think a lot of guys struggle with that and become very paranoid because of it. They always think that someone else is trying to steal their spot, trying to undermine them in some way. And it is very, very real. I'm not going to say that I didn't suffer it myself. I certainly did in TNA. The pressure was huge. It did have a profound effect on me. And it's interesting. There's a documentary coming out next year, which kind of covers the struggles that I had with mental health. Not only within wrestling, but after wrestling, after the lights have gone down and you can't get in the ring anymore and do what you want to do, and the effect that has on you as a person. Because obviously wrestling defines you for a large part of your life, and then suddenly you have to stop. And what replace? I mean, it's the same as probably applies to any entertainer, any sportsman. Once that stops, what do you do? How do you replace that? And you have to think of constructive and constructive ways in order to fill that void in your life. Otherwise, it does eat you up, and you do struggle with that. But I see it. I've seen it a lot. I've seen wrestlers struggle with not being where they want to be in their careers. I've seen guys struggle with the fact they're away from their families all the time, and it's the only way they can earn a living. Inherent loneliness, even though they're on a tour with 10 other guys, still inherently lonely when you go back to your hotel room at the end of the night. I've seen guys suffer, paranoia because they think that someone else is trying to undermine their career, or someone else is, interfering with their family, for want of a better phrase. I've seen it all within the scope of professional wrestling, and how those things can affect your mind. And the other thing that's it's not unfortunate, but that wrestling then offers the escape as well. For that 20 minutes that you're in the ring, it's all gone, and you're swept up in that moment, and that takes it away. But then that just magnifies the problem sometimes when you're out of that, unfortunately. I don't really know what the answer is. It's a hard business, and you have to know what you're getting yourself into. I think a good way to deal with it is not have too much expectation. Go in with the attitude that you're going to have fun, enjoy yourself, and make a little bit of money. And if good things come along, great. But if they don't eat yourself up about it. So a lot of it's all luck, And I try to give that kind of speech to guys when I go and do training seminars about, just try and keep your expectations reasonable or realistic, and don't try and jump ahead of yourself. Don't put all that pressure on yourself to achieve something, because 99% of you will never do that.
unfortunately, just enjoy what you're doing, have fun wrestling, and use it for a great social tool and a great way to stay fit and have fun and entertain people.
Awesome, really good answer and stuff like that. So you mentioned obviously family there and stuff like that. I mean, how hard was it for you, like juggling family and obviously wrestling life?
I mean, it wasn't too bad for me, to be honest with you. I was married for a large part of my career to a woman who knew what wrestling was about. She knew what was going to happen in my career, took off, and we dealt with it reasonably well. I didn't have any. We never had any children, so I can't really reflect on how it would affect my kids. I just know I missed my cats a lot when I was away, so they were my children. Yeah, but I said that there's other people that I've known it's affected them badly. People that do have kids, people that have a partner that doesn't necessarily understand wrestling and what it entails, from the get-go. But no, I was relatively lucky in that respect.
Okay. Jim, up to you, bro.
Yeah, totally. So obviously, as you mentioned, obviously your wife, what other coping mechanisms would you say that you found most effective when you were at your lowest point?
Coping mechanisms, good ones or bad ones? Because drink's a bad one, isn't it? I mean, I drank a lot. It's a coping mechanism, I guess, in that it helps you relax and forget. But you know what? Probably the main thing I probably did was knuckle down and work hard and try and improve whatever I was doing that I needed to do in order to get ahead again. I was never really in a position where I was kind of fighting to get work or fighting to stay ahead. I was, for my time where I was in the context of British wrestling, I was in quite a privileged position for most of my career. I consider that now when I look back. And really, I think it's just working hard and concentrating on your career and not letting things get to you. Just moving on. You eat yourself up about having a bad match, convince the other guy, try to make you look bad. But once that match is done, you're on to the next one, and then you have a fantastic match and you feel great again. So it's not, just letting things go and move on with your career is probably, one way I coped, I guess. I never, thankfully, dabbled in recreational drugs, thankfully, which I know a lot of guys used to in order to cope. And that's not just to cope with the mental aspects, that was to cope with pain as well, and a lot of other things, physical pain, and boredom probably is the worst thing I find in a hotel room, in the car, traveling. Is just boredom is a killer as well. But I made it through and I'm still here, so I've coped in certain ways, thankfully.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we put obviously a post out for fan questions, and what Culture Pro Wrestling's ring announcer Stevie Aaron says, ask him about Mr. Brexit. I don't know what we're going to ask about this.
Well, I don't really know. It was something that they came up with, and they said, "Do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Well, okay." Totally opposite to my belief system. But again, it's the same as British Invasion. You take something that the promoter wants you to do, and you just run with it and just make it as ridiculous as possible. Like I would sit at the ringside reading the Daily Mail and just get people to, chant things at me and what have you. But it lasted for a little bit, but it didn't really go anywhere as far as I'm concerned. But it was a lot of fun, all things considered.
It's you, over to you, bro.
So obviously, with you having a background in judo, you're quite obviously known for being a very technically mat-based wrestler. And the chaos theory suplex that you do for your finisher, which I've seen quite a lot of it, and I think it's an absolute boss of a move. What was the inspiration behind the move, and how did it become your signature?
Well, so very, very early on in my career, I wrestled Chris Daniels, and we were putting a match together. He said, "What's your finisher?" And I just said, "A German suplex." And he goes, "Oh, is that all? You wanna try and add something to that and make it a bit special?" So I started, playing around at the gym, trying to come up with ways to make the German suplex a little bit different, add something to it, and that's ultimately what I came up with. And interestingly, originally I had it coming off the ropes like an O'Connor roll and doing it, but British rings are so small. Generally, they're like 16 foot that I was forced to do it corner to corner in order to get the space behind me. But I actually think it makes it more effective because then you're battering the guy into the post before rolling him up. So it actually added an extra layer to the move. And that just developed from there, really. And I hadn't seen anyone else do it, which is a major plus, But yeah, credit to Chris Daniels for that, because he inspired me to add that extra something to the German suplex.
Awesome. What's the biggest piece of advice you got given as a wrestler?
The biggest piece of advice, most important, is, I'm going to sound like such an old timer now, but slow down. As slow as you think you're going, go slower. It was, I lose count of the amount of old timers that told me that you're going too quickly, you're doing too much, slow down, let the crowd digest what you're doing. And at the time, you think, you're just jealous. You can't do everything I'm doing now. That's what you think when you're younger. But when you move through your career, you start to understand that what they're saying is the truth. You have to slow down. The whole point of professional wrestling is a crowd, or what you're entertaining a crowd that are watching, and the crowd have to understand and digest everything you do, not just the moves, but everything in between the moves as well. So everything you have to give them has to be registered, and then they can engage in it. So that you slow down, they accept and they understand, and then you can move on with the match, and you find that you get more engagement out of the crowd because of that. And I think that's probably the best bit of it. That's the one bit of advice I've had from everybody nearly from my entire career, which makes a lot of sense. The other piece of advice I always give guys at training seminars, really boring, I know, is just get your fundamentals down, get your basics down. I always say if you can bump and sell, and if you can do nothing else, you can still have a match, because you can get in the ring with someone, they can just do all these things to you, and as long as you bump and sell, it'll be a squash match, but at least you can do those things and make him look good. So focus on those things first, learning how to fall properly and safely, protecting yourself, learn how to sell to make your opponent look good, and then move on to the more complicated stuff, the actual moves and putting your character together and everything like that. So that's kind of my kind of tips and the things I kind of project to guys when I do seminars.
Okay. Jim, over to you, bro.
So, looking back on your career, Doug, you've held numerous titles, including world titles, the TNA X Division Championships, Intercontinental titles, yada, yada, yada. When you get approached by a producer and you get told you're winning this title, which was the most sort of like shocking time that you were told you're winning a certain title?
It was me winning the TV title from AJ Styles in TNA was probably the one I was least expecting, because he obviously main event star. And yeah, I didn't think that would ever going to happen in that respect. Winning the IWGP tag titles was probably a bit of a shock as well, because we weren't actually working for the New Japan at the time. It was a shock for them as well. So that's probably my second most shocking title win that I was told about. And to be honest with you, 90% of the time, you don't actually know until you get there if you're going to win the belts or not. You know, a lot of the programs are built a certain way. X Division title are kind of new because you could see that the program was going in that direction, and that was, you know, that nice feeling to have. But a lot of times, you know, until you get there, you don't know for sure what's going to happen. Yeah,
Even more of a surprise, right? I guess.
yeah.
So
And sometimes you don't want to hold a title. You're sick of having it. You want to get rid of it.
extra luggage, is that what you're saying?
Extra luggage. Yeah. Extra luggage and having to wrestle the main event every night.
Yeah. So, do you still watch wrestling from like a fan's point of view? Now, obviously, you're out of the ring.
I do. I watch limited amounts of it. I watch WWE only because I have Netflix and it's easily accessible. But 9 times out of 10, I'll watch the highlights, say on YouTube, unless there's something specific I want to see. Then I'll watch the programming on Netflix. Don't really watch AEW unless there's a specific match I want to catch, and then I'll try and get it. However I get it, you know, through ITV or I used to be on Fight TV, but I don't think they're on there anymore, are they? But I used to try and catch up with those. So it's nothing I watch kind of on the regular. I'll just pick up stuff as I want to see it, you know. And I do try and watch it because I have no desire to step back in the ring now because it's one I ache a lot and I've got a lot of body parts that need replacing. But two, it is different to when I was wrestling. You know, everything's evolved. It's moved on, and the athleticism is off the charts now. So I don't really have a desire to get in there anymore. So I do enjoy watching it and try and watch it from a fan's point of view without trying to be too picky. Just sit back and get in and be entertained, because that's ultimately what wrestling is. It's entertainment, isn't it? It wants, you know, they're trying to entertain you such that you come back and spend your money again or watch their TV show again. I do try. And there's a lot to watch, isn't there? But say specific matches, specific segments, I'll try and catch when I can.
Okay. Jim, up to you, bro.
So, if you had the opportunity to step into the ring, if you were physically able to for one last match, if you could pick 3 guys, one from WWE, one from AEW, and one from a promotion of your choosing, who would it be, and what match would it be?
So WWE would be quite easy. I'd probably want to wrestle Chad Gable because I think he's fantastic. He's got all the tools. Appreciate he's out injured at the moment, but he seems anything they give him, he kind of hits it out of the park. And he uses my finisher as well. So that's, you know, which he has acknowledged too. He has acknowledged me. So I appreciate that. AEW, I would love to wrestle Carl Fletcher again. I've wrestled him several times as a tag team in Aussie Open when they first started out in this country. So I'd love to see how he's developed now as a single star. He looks fantastic. So I think that would probably be my choice for AEW. A promotion of my choosing, hey? That's interesting. It's very difficult to say because I don't really know outside the big two. I'm trying to think of guys on the British scene now that I like. I don't know if you've seen Bullet. He's a big guy, works for Progress. I'd like to wrestle him. I'd like to wrestle Simon Miller more because he has got a ton of potential and he just needs to. He needs more reps. You know, he needs guidance and he needs a little bit of fine tuning. So I think I'd like to work with him as well. Actually, that would be quite interesting. Yeah, I think that's probably my picks. I'm terrible. Sorry, but the British scene, I'm so out of the loop. I've been to a few shows recently, and guys, you know, they're guys that are great, and I've never seen them before. I need to probably delve in a little bit more and get. Most of the guys I know are from 3 or 4 years ago, but there's obviously a whole new crop that are coming through that are fantastic. So I need to catch up and get out there and watch a bit more British wrestling, I think.
Yeah. I think the thing is with the British wrestling scene as well is even me, I'm always discovering somebody every single week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. I was at a show. I did a guest referee spot at a show last weekend, and they had a 4-way girls match, and I hadn't seen any of the girls before, and it was probably the second best match on the show. I thought, so like you say, you're always discovering someone new, aren't you? So it's interesting, which is a good thing as well. It's good to see there's an abundance of talent still about coming through.
Absolutely, and stuff like that. So, for you personally, Doug, how do you want to be remembered in wrestling?
How do I want to be remembered? Well, I'd like to think I was one of the key people that kept the scene alive during a time when it wasn't perhaps so exposed or known as it is now, and allowed the development of everybody that is now a huge star and the scene as a whole now. I think that's really enough for me, that people remember me for being, if not but one of those people that kept it alive, and kept British wrestling out there on the international stage. So people still knew there was a business in this country, still knew there were good wrestlers coming out of this country. And it was a place worth exploring, and a place where you could go and see fantastic wrestling. And I think managed to achieve that. And it's only now showing through everybody that's doing so well on a global stage. I mean, the opportunities that people have now are unparalleled compared to, when I started, it was, it was a pipe dream even to get out of the UK at all. So it's amazing. I think it's fantastic for anyone who's starting now, anyone who's, in the infancy of their career. They've got so much to look forward to, and that's a great thing. And like to think that I helped build that. So,
absolutely, I'm sure you. I agree, mate. You're one of the pioneers of British wrestling. Do you know what I mean? For me personally, anyway.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Absolutely, Jim. Over to you, bro.
Yeah. So, obviously, after a long and decorated career, mate, what led you obviously to your initial retirement, and then what prompted you for your subsequent return to the ring?
So injury led me to my first retirement. I needed neck surgery. And I just kind of thought at the time I'd done everything I'd done everything I could do. I was 48, so it's probably time to call it quits. What caused me to go back was lockdown, COVID, sitting at home doing nothing, thinking whilst you still can, you might as well get out there and do the things you enjoy doing. So I came back. One thing, I helped the British scene a little bit as well, starting back up, because it took a bit of a hit during COVID, obviously. And and I managed to achieve something I never thought I would, and win the NWA tag team titles, which was incredible, So I did have something else to achieve, which I managed, which I never thought I would. So, and then unfortunately, it's just my body, the physical side of it has caught up with me, and I was forced to retire because of surgery, knee replacement surgery, and that was it really. And now, that last year I was wrestling, 22 through to 23, I was hurting myself every time I got in the ring. Not major things, but it'd always pull something, pull a muscle, or you'd sprain something, or I'd knock something, and I just thought, this is not fun anymore. It's hurting me all the time. I'm not enjoying it. So it was the right time, really. And now I can sit back and enjoy it and watch it and think, I made the right decision, because those guys are killing themselves nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug, it's been an absolute blast, mate. I hope you've enjoyed yourself today, bud.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's been great. I like. It's been real, like a good conversation with a couple of friends, which is always a good way for a podcast to go. You're not firing questions at me like a colonel in the army or something like that.
No, that's one thing we try and do on this show, is try and make it like a chat, like we've obviously done today and stuff like that, mate. And like I said, mate, thank you so much again. I can't thank you enough. Jim, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just thank you, Doug. Honestly, it's been an absolute dream having you on, mate. Really do appreciate it, and it's been an honour just being in your presence. Obviously, you've been in the ring with so many fantastic people, and it's just fantastic to actually meet you. I think myself and Liam were shaking like shitting dogs before we came on the podcast.
We was.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Absolutely. So a couple of things I need from you now, mate. Is there anything you'd like to plug?
Well, I'll plug my socials. I'm on X, Doug Williams UK. although I don't use it too much. I'm kind of loiter on there as opposed to post anything. Instagram is at Doug Williams GB. Don't ask me why they're different. I just happen to be. I post more on Instagram. I post historical pictures on there. I post, upcoming appearances, everyday life stuff on there. So if you're interested in what I'm up to or what I've done in my career, excuse me, Instagram's the place to go. I don't have any immediate appearances at the moment to plug, but as I mentioned earlier, do have a documentary coming out probably early next year, dealing with the mental side of professional wrestling and how it affects you, as well as like an overview of my career as well. And then sometime next year, I'll hopefully have an autobiography out. I'm about to start writing that and getting that down. So that will be something to look out for in the coming year, depending on how long it takes me. I know Johnny's took him 3 or 4 years in the end, so fingers crossed mine won't be quite as long as he's done a lot of the research for me, actually, reading his book. I can use that as a good sort of reference for a lot of my own stuff, to be honest with you. But so that's in the pipeline. But yeah, I'll say check out my socials. I pop up, I do appearances. I did a guest referee spot last week at a promotion. I do training seminars reasonably regularly, one every couple of months or so. So yeah, check them out and come by and say hello if you're a Doug Williams fan.
Absolutely. So what we'll do, Doug, we'll put all your socials in the description of this video so people can jump from that to go and support you. How's that, bud?
Great. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. So I need one final thing, mate. Everyone we interview gets to do the outro of this show, so you can say anything you want, mate, and we'll end the stream. Doug, it's over to you, bro.
This is Doug Williams, your ambassador of British wrestling, and you've been watching me on this very important podcast called The Magic of Wrestling. Farewell, and thank you very much again. Cheers.